元宇宙之后，让我们聚焦当下，一起挖掘游戏助力环境保护的潜力。下面，让我们有请联合国环境规划署教育与青年部主管 Sam Barrett， 联合国环境规划署低碳负责人Xinyang， 联合国环境规划署项目主管 Lisa Pack， 微软 Xbox 全球可持续发展总监 Trista Patterson，Tilting Point 产品负责人 Bulkeley， 荒原林海制作人温Xinyang，共同带领我们进入到玩游戏救地球经验谈的圆桌环节。
Good afternoon, good evening, or even good morning. My name's Sam Barrett. I work for UN Environment, and we're here to talk to you for an hour around a session with some learnings and some insights from the Playing for the Planet Alliance that we run. What we want to do is run through 5 things. One is for me to introduce the purpose and the aims of the initiative. Then you'll hear from Lisa and Hunter, about the Green Game Jam. And then what we'll also then have is a really interesting session with Trista from Microsoft and Xiao, who works here with us at UNEP, just about the work on decarbonisation. And off the back of that, we want to give you some key takeaways and some things that you could do to help this kind of work. So first of all, what is Playing for the Planet? And really, it's quite simple. We're an alliance that was formed in 2019 that's facilitated by UN Environment, and we've got over 43 different members working to really take action both on decarbonising the gaming studio or also working to put green activations in games. Also, there's some new initiatives around plastics, which is what Sega's working on, and we're also talking to a number of fairly big games, events and exhibitions to see what they can do on this agenda. This is our list of members who we're really proud of. So at the top, you can see all the studios from around the world who are working with us, and then below, a number of different trade bodies who are working to extend the message in their networks as well. So why is the UN engaging the video gaming industry, which is a question that we often get asked? And really, I think it comes down to 3 reasons. One is the reach is unbeatable. Whether you are Generation Alpha, Gen Z, or even somebody like my mother-in-law, a lot of people are playing games. So young, old, all across the world, it's the medium that's reaching more than anyone else. And the second point, it is probably the biggest entertainment platform. And I think it wins not just in terms of reach, but also in terms of engagement. People are spending a lot of time in games, and they're also socializing in games as well. And I think the third message is going way beyond just playing. So what we're starting to see is people who are playing, and we'll hear that from Hunter in his case study, also to connect with friends, to think about impact, and to want to get more from a game than just either entertainment or distraction. And so I think for us, we have a brilliant team of 5 people. Here they all are here. So with Siri, who works at UNEP with us, and also we have Deb and Lisa and Xiao. We're a really great team of people working on this agenda. And I think what we would say is we're trying to achieve 3 things. First of all, we're trying to reduce emissions. That's our number 1 objective. And we've seen the impact of when we let runaway climate change take effect this summer with the heat waves and the wildfires and the flash floods. So really, the climate challenge we face is an everyone everywhere issue, and we need all hands on deck. Number 2, we want to activate the 3 billion gamers in the world to think about what they can do on this agenda, which is why we're so keen for initiatives like the Green Game Jam to succeed. But also we're keen to grow. We want to get more members on board. And so hopefully off the back of the session you'll have today, it'll give you pause for thought, and we're keen to hear from you if you'd like to join as well. So with no further ado, let me hand over to Lisa and Hunter to talk about what we've achieved this year with the Green Game Jam. So over to you, Lisa. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Pack, and I've been with the Playing for the Planet team since last year. My work here focuses mainly on everything related to the Green Game Jam, and that's also what we'll be talking about today. In the next 15 or so minutes, we'll cover some general details about the Jam and share with you what the Jam actually is, as well as what we have achieved so far. After that, we'll be joined by one of the winners from this year, who will talk about their journey into the Jam and what they have come up with as their green activation. By the end of it all, hopefully you'll feel inspired to join us yourself next year. So let's get started. Empowering your players to change their world through the games they know, trust, and love. This is really what the Jam is all about. It's basically a movement of industry leaders who collaborate to educate and inspire climate action within their studios and amongst their millions of players. When we go into some more detail around that, what it actually looks like can be broken down into 3 parts. First, you select a game with an existing audience so that you can reach as many people as possible. Then you and your team will brainstorm to tweak this game by implementing a green activation. And a so-called green activation can be a new feature, a time-limited event, a new world, a level, or really anything that you can come up with that will then empower your players to take action for the environment in a safe place that they are already familiar with. So the Jam has been around for 3 years now. In its first year, 2020, we had 11 entries and it was a mobile-only Jam. The year after, it grew to 27 entries, and we were joined not only by mobile studios, but also by console and PC studios. And this year, we've had the biggest Jam to date with 42 different entries. And each of these entries showed so much creativity that I would like to encourage everyone to check out our website to get a little bit more insight around the green activations of each of these studios, because it's really cool to see. And as this was the biggest Jam so far, I'd love to share a few more details around what we have done this year. So a bit of background for this year. Our theme was Food, Forest, and Future. And with that, we have tried to achieve 2 main goals. The first is to shift 1 million players' food choices. And secondly, to plant and protect 1 million trees. The majority of studios have gone all in on the forest theme. And with that, we can already share some early results. Together, studios have planted over 625,000 trees with our Jam partner Ecosia so far. On top of that, an additional 115,000 trees have been planted with other reforestation organizations. And these counters are still going up as many studios have not yet started their activations. And others have actually not finalized it. So keep an eye on that. This year, as I mentioned, we had 42 different games participating. Each of them are shown here on the screen now, just so you know who they are. And 8 awards have also been handed out. And here's a quick overview of these 8 awards. Supercell and Heyday took home not 1, but 2 awards. There's Riders Republic, Imagine Earth, June's Journey, Brawlhalla, and Carbon Island. And lastly, there is Pterogenesis from Tilting Point. And with that, I would actually like to hand it over to Hunter Bulkeley from Tilting Point, who will share a little bit more around Pterogenesis and the game's journey into the Green Game Jam. So over to you, Hunter.
Thanks, Lisa, for that great introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Hunter Bulkeley. I'm a senior product manager at Tilting Point. I've worked on a whole bunch of games that you can see on the right, but I'm here to talk to you today about Pterogenesis, which is our game that's based around terraforming. You take this barren planet and make it into this lush green paradise, which works really well with the whole ethos of climate change sustainability. And we actually began our sustainability journey a year ago, before working with the Green Game Jam that we hadn't heard of at the time, by integrating a feature into our game that, based on player actions, plants trees in the real world. And we've, to date, planted over 500,000 trees. So I want to walk you through that feature, what we learned from doing so, why we joined the Green Game Jam, and what we then did with the Green Game Jam to prove our analyses and our theories, and how it can help you. And so what we've done is a permanent feature integration into Pterogenesis, where players acquire a carbon impact currency from various places in the game, and then can go to the My Forest tab and plant trees in it. It'll trigger a nice little animation. They'll get a reward based on the number of trees they plant, and it'll have a nice little ticker at the top to show them the record of it. And so it gives them nice visual feedback. In that line of visual feedback, we also have the background that actually changes based on the number of trees you plant. And so you can see here, the player hasn't planted any trees, and it's this blasted wasteland. It's snowy, it is smoggy, the ground is cracked, and unarable, and so it's all destroyed. And then when the player starts planting trees, the sky starts to clean up, the buildings start to rust away, and you start to see the rebirth of this planet. And when we get further in, the sky is even clearer. And then you start to see this futuristic city building in the background. The sky is perfectly clear. The green ground is lush. And then you start to see flowers. The city is complete. The sky is completely clear. And that's the journey we take the players on as they plant trees to help reinforce that they're rebuilding and refreshing the planet. And they acquire this currency via a few different ways. So first, there's an uplift on all of our basic hard currency purchases. We give away a small number of carbon impact currencies. And then we also sell them separately as flat purchases. On top of that, there's also an ad placement where users can watch ads for a smaller amount of carbon impact currency. And then we also give away the currency in limited time events. Basically things that are difficult to complete and usually have to monetize. And so everything ties back to retention or monetization at the end of the day, because what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a permanent feature in our game. And in order to create a permanent feature in the game that your CFO isn't going to come down and yell at you for keeping on, you need to make sure that it is profit neutral and that you can prove that. And so that was our goal, tie everything to monetizing events. So how did it actually work? Did we see any uplift that justified the cost of doing this? Well, we saw that our ads were more impacted than our IIP. So we saw about a 20% uplift on our ads watched per DAU. Interestingly, this did not cannibalize our existing ad placements, and so it just drove higher ad engagement and watches, thankfully. On top of, unfortunately, on the in-app purchase side, the direct monetization, we didn't see much change at all. There was maybe about a 4% change overall. Users really weren't converting to it drastically or engaging with it. And so one thing that we came to the conclusion of is that our users are more likely to spend time than money. And I think this will go across a lot of different games, not just our own, but it leads to everyone wants to sign up for the charity petitions. You get millions of signatures. But when it comes to actually doing something, or when it comes to actually donating money, people are much more tight with their money and less likely to engage with it. Did we actually achieve net neutral profitability? Well, spoiler, yes, we did. You can see the math. We plant a tree per about every half install in terms of how much currency they acquire. And it cost at the time about 18 cents per tree. And so we saw about a 10-cent uplift, basically 10-cent cost per install on our CPI. And as you can see on the right, our LTV rose by about 11 cents. And so we have about a 1 cent install margin per install. And that just supports the cost of the developing the feature and supporting the game long term. So it is net neutral profitability. So we made this awesome feature back in 2021 before we even knew of the Green Game Jam. Why did we partner with Playing for the Planet? Well, basically, we wanted access to all of these exclusive and awesome partners that they went out and found: Rodale Institute, Project Cacao, Urban Harvester, that they also organize lectures and conversations with, so that we can learn and grow on our own climate change journey. On top of that, we got to be part of this network of 42 other studios who were participating in the Green Game Jam on having conversations back and forth about how to engage our players behind this, sharing knowledge about what we found was working, what we tried before, and pushing ourselves forward. So what did we actually do? Why did we very thankfully win the Participants' Choice Award? Well, I wanted to test how to drive up that higher in-app purchases. And so I figured, okay, people may be more willing to put their wallets behind something if they can show it off. And so we implemented the Treater Board, which is a tree planting leaderboard. And so it tracks how many trees you plant in a given week and ranks you accordingly. And it resets every week so that we can refresh everything. We also did a limited time event. So the Treater Board was on the monetization side. The limited time event was trying to drive at our educational aspect to help promote food choices and change here. And so we presented Planet Earth that was ruined by climate change and walked you through a story of reforesting and bringing it back to life. We renamed a lot of the tech and facilities in the game based on real reforestation and sustainability practices, including adding the Rodale Institute itself into the game. We also added specific bonuses and random events and detractors based on actual things that would occur, such as adding food waste and human consumption to decreasing the biomass on our planets. What did this actually do? Did we do what we wanted to do? Well, yes, we did drive higher in-app purchase engagement, largely by the whales. And so on the left, you can see the chart where we nearly 2x the tree-based IAPs and engagement with it as the whales tried to race to the top of the leaderboard. Now, this wasn't mass conversion here. It was very much driven by our ARPPU. However, our ads lied largely unaffected, as our ad watching users, our free-to-play users, weren't going to race up the leaderboard. Still, the IAP side was what we were aiming for. Our limited time event as well turned out to be our second highest performing limited time event of all time, with a lot of really good engagement and feedback from our players overall. On top of that, since we had so many studios involved, we were able to do some collective bargaining and leverage for group iOS featuring, particularly in the EU largely, to nearly have a 50% 2x increase in our EU installs, which was an awesome sight, and we're hoping to do more of in the future. And so what I want you to take away from this talk and my example is that you can use free-to-play techniques to leverage your audience behind this social cause. You can do this profit neutrally so that it doesn't cost you any money, but you can be the custodian to leverage that massive player base that you have towards this good. And there are a lot of services and charities out there that you can partner with. On top of that, bear in mind that all the normal live operations techniques that you've used in the past still exist. You need to think about what your player base is, how they'll respond to different monetization drivers, such as our in-app purchasers responding much more to the competitive element, and our free-to-play players just enjoying the collection side.
Thank you so much, Hunter, for sharing all those insights with us today. And I really hope that it inspires other gaming studios to go on a similar journey. So if you feel inspired, feel free to sign up now on our website, playingfortheplanet.org/greengamejam, and sign up for the jam next year. And hopefully we will be seeing you all there.
It's been great to see so many gaming studios participate into the Green Game Jam in the past 3 years. In 2021, Timmy Studio Group and Tencent Institute of Games have actually created a spin-off called the Green Game Jam for Youth. Students from China, North America, and Southeast Asia could participate, and up next, you'll hear from the winning team of the 2021 Youth Jam as they will share more about their game idea.
Revival in the Wasteland is a simulation game about desert afforestation. It is based on a real story, simulating the experience of converting the Mawusu Desert into an oasis while fighting against extreme weather conditions. I was inspired by the real story of Xinyang, who lived on the border of the desert and was committed to growing trees to protect her hometown. Across 30 years, she has gone through a lonely journey of learning to fight against wind and sand, gaining experiences and techniques, and raised over 500,000 trees. I was impressed by her story and started to think, what can I do to promote her endeavor? I wanted to translate it into an immersive experience. That's my motivation for creating this game. I hope to present vividly the challenges and learnings of afforestation using game design. However, more questions come to my mind immediately. How to convert the complex environmental conditions into clear and quantifiable gameplay? How to tell this grand story properly? To answer quickly, let's take a look at the game. For the game design, I built an integral ecosystem centered around the following core principles. For every plant grown, some eco points will be rewarded. If you manage to maintain a high number of eco points, you could progress to a higher eco grid as an indication of a better afforestation result. With that, you can unlock economic plants which can be sold for money and buy more trees. However, when a tree dies, it can no longer generate eco points, and environmental conditions might deteriorate. Hence, the players are encouraged to strategically allocate resources to achieve ecological balance. To accurately present the desert ecosystem, we worked on the details, such as different sets of environment. Revival in the Wasteland includes 8 different scenes, representing 8 unique types of landscape in the desert. Each landscape varies in both visual design and game mechanics. From the harsh windward sandslope to the moist basin, the players are encouraged to improve on their strategies in order to adapt to different challenges in different scenes. This thinking process helps the players to develop an understanding of a real theory in modern forestry that is called choosing the right species for different environments. I'd also like to express my gratitude towards the botanists from Chinese Academy of Sciences who provided us with professional support. With their help, this gang is able to embody abundant knowledge of ecology and forestry. Our players could enjoy the story while forming their own understanding of scientific knowledge and apply different strategies to protect the last greenery in the desert.
Now that we have covered the Green Game Jam in depth, let's move on to our next topic, which will be hosted by Xiao. She will be sharing more around decarbonization and how gaming studios can reduce their carbon emissions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Decarb session. My name is Wang Xiao, and I am the decarbonization lead of the Playing for the Planet initiative. One of the questions most people ask me when we talk about climate action is how much the climate is changing and how does that relate to net zero? In order to answer that question, let's look at this graph I have demonstrated for you. On this graph, we can see the emissions and expected warming according to the different actions and pledges activities of the different scenarios, where we can see from the blue line indicating where we are now to the best case scenario of the green line. There is a huge ambition gap to 2030 where we need to fill. And according to the World Meteorological Organization, there is 93% of likelihood that one of these years, from this year until 2026, will become the hottest year on the record. And there is 50% chance that the annual average global temperature will going beyond 1.5 degree pre-industrial time within the next 5 years. And this global warming translating into climate action is what we have seen from the deadly hurricane Ida in the United States to the flood in Europe and Asia and the hunger-inducing droughts in Africa. These cost us tens of billions of dollars and severe human suffering. In order for us to meet the 1.5 degrees, we will need to start net zero transitions. And let's do a projection. In order to meet the 1.5 degrees with 50% of probability, what does that mean? That means we will only have 400 to 800 gigatons of CO2 left as the carbon budget. And in order for us to stay within this carbon budget, we will have to peak our carbon emissions before 2030 and fall to net zero no later than 2050. And because of this urgency, the world's government has already started acting. As a matter of fact, last year in the COP26, the UK government has announced that all the listed companies and big asset managers in the UK are required to publish their net zero transition strategies. And if they do not have any, they will have to provide legit explanations for why they could not. Now let's look at the gaming sector. First of all, let's look at the growth of the gaming market. Here are some very big numbers indicating the fast growth of this industry. According to statistics, there is more than 1/3 of the world population, around 2.8 billion people are gamers, and this number is expected to surpass 3 billion by 2023. Over the past two decades, the gaming industry has experienced a 20-fold growth, reaching $160 billion in 2020. And this remarkable growth is expected to continue due to the growth of metaverse, esport, cryptocurrency, as well as improved connectivity and affordability of the mobile. Because the video games are so widespread, the concerns over the energy use and associated greenhouse gas emissions is guaranteed. Nowadays, the power draw of the video games is 70 times higher than the ones in 1970s. And there are lots of debates about the carbon footprint of the gaming industry, but there is no universally agreed aggregated number of carbon footprint for the entire industry. However, I have shown some of the numbers which can give us a sense of the magnitude of the issues we're facing. So let's look at figure 1, which is about PC games. According to data, PC games use tremendous amount of energy. Globally per year, PC games use the equivalent of 25 standard electric power plants. And as shown in figure 1, where we can see the high-end desktop computer use is nearly 25 times more electricity than the laptop entry-level light user does. Different playing mode do affect different energy use, as shown on figure 2. And according to Sony, if 1 million users of PlayStation 5 enable the lower power mode, that would save equivalent to the average electricity use of 1,000 US homes. The last component I want to address here is about cloud gaming. The energy consumption, although varies across different types of equipment, but the increased energy consumption of cloud gaming is still significant, as we can see in figure 3. Lots of the gaming sector start already talking about decarbonization and net zero transition. However, a large majority of the companies are still at a very early age of their decarbonization journey, and there are many challenges waiting ahead. And here I have summarized some of the challenges we see from both the technical side and the policy side. And these are based on the mapping studies where we've done of all the P4P members. Let's look at the technical side, where we see the terminologies creates lots of confusions. When companies talking about their target ambitions, if they do not understand different decarbonization lexicon or terminologies very well, they're likely to mix what they need to deliver. Like, what's the differences between carbon neutrality and net zero carbon? If you mix them, then you're probably going to ignore the aspects of the type of offsetting projects you can use, because net zero carbon only accept long-term carbon capture offsetting projects. And if we don't differentiate net zero carbon and net zero emissions in your target, where we will be avoid the fact that reaching the net zero emissions will cost 2 decades more than we reach the net zero carbon. And the next challenge we're seeing is on the direct emissions, where companies setting their target, there's no clear definitions of the emission types being counted. And in terms of indirect emissions, we see the limited data availability and the lack of knowledge across the entire value chain, whereas prohibiting the companies of requiring the detailed information from their downstream activities and upstream suppliers. And on the policy side, we see that video gaming sectors is almost untouched by regulations on the energy use part, and on the standards is also showing a gap. Now let's talk about something positive. If we want to make a change, what can be done? What are the opportunities? So in tackling the first challenge, which is the terminology confusions on the industrial levels, develop sectoral guidance and standards are very important for the corporate level. And of course, all of these actions need to be backed up by sector-specific tools for accounting and reporting of the emissions. And at the corporate level, improve your transparency of carbon disclosure through unified reporting platforms and verified offsetting projects will help you to make sure that offsetting project delivered what they promised to deliver, which help you to understand the impact you are creating, but also increase your green credits of the company. Last but not least is to develop capacity building through best practice sharing and demonstrate your corporate leadership. If you're looking for support, I believe P4P is the place where we can help you to start your decarbonization journey. We facilitate voluntary actions on carbon reductions, but also provide recognitions among our members. In P4P, we propose the decarb steps to our members, from setting your corporate decarbonization strategies to quantify the carbon emissions, and then take on actions to reduce, assess your achievements, and verify your offsetting projects, and then, at last, share and learn. Reducing carbon needs require collective actions, and we're happy here to provide help for you. So if you are interested in knowing more about the P4P decarb work, you are more than welcome to get in touch with me, and you can find my contact information here. Video gaming industry is leveling up in fight against climate change. In this session, we will talk about how to set the pace for corporate decarbonization. It is our great honor to have Microsoft's Global Director of Gaming Sustainability, Trista Patterson, to be with me in this discussion. Trista, welcome.
Joe, thank you so much for the invitation to speak to this great group. I think looking back, we think about those of us that have worked with emissions, and my background working with managing emissions began with the US government back about 20 years ago. And I wrote my dissertation on global and international companies dealing with very complex emissions problems. And it's been kind of my fascination in the area for a very long time. I had a former position with UN Environment Support Unit Grid Arendal, that was in Norway, where the majority of the work that I did was located in Southern Asian, African countries in application to emissions reductions. And that was really interesting because it's at the public-private interface where global ambitions that cross lots of disparities, lots of different cultural backgrounds are coming together for collective goal. And then also where that meets where the rubber often meets the road is where it also combines with private ambition, recognizing that oftentimes the private sector is the most innovative, they're the most efficient, they're also developing really well in places where there are new spaces emerging, where they're getting people excited, they're creating really valuable livelihood and opportunities. And so it's that crossroads that I've always found most interesting. I think with respect to decarbonization, people have this idea that that Playing for the Planet has a very, very long history because it's such a large organization now. There's so many game companies that are involved and active, but that's not really the case. Playing for the Planet was only formed in 2019 at the UN Climate Action Summit at the UN General Assembly in New York City. It was a very early phase initiative where a lot of the CEOs of many of these game companies took and stuck their neck out to say, we're going to reach across our competitive landscape and join with the leaders of other companies to do something that was totally new and different, recognizing that in order to bring about solutions for global climate change, we as companies also have to reach across what are otherwise competitive landscapes in order to make the best possible actions happen. I also wanted to mention to everyone in the audience, if you're coming from a perspective where your job title is not sustainability analyst, you are not chief sustainability officer, you're not even clear about whether or not your position in a company to address this is something that's supported by leadership or they find it a concern. These are very typical challenges for people in the climate space. And what is most important is that you have a passion, you have expertise in an area that's already valued to your company, and you're bringing to it intellectual rigor and also a willingness to collaborate with others that are trying to learn as they do and they go along. So just because you aren't in a formalized position about this, don't let that keep you back, because there are so many opportunities in this space. This is really a career defining area where it's not just about climate, it's about energy efficiency. And that energy efficiency principle is something that is important to every single company's on the planet's bottom line. So that's a bit about the background. I started as an economist working with the government and then UN Environment Program. And we formed the Playing for the Planet initiative just a few years ago that now includes, I think it's 36 at least different of the largest game companies, including Tencent, representing 1.5 billion gamers and its activity. And it also represents a tremendous resource for you to learn how all of you can get involved with taking action, addressing energy efficiency, and also productive climate outcomes that are important both for the people, your company, and the planet.
Absolutely agree. And especially after hearing your amazing and exciting experiences with P4P and decarbonization, it only made me more interested about knowing what have you been doing with Microsoft? Because I know Microsoft has always been on the front line of climate actions. And I want our wider audience, especially our Chinese audience, to know Xbox as the extension of Microsoft. What exactly is your decarbonization goal and how do you plan to achieve it?
Right. So I think it's important to note that Microsoft made its public commitments visible only a few years ago. So that was only in 2020 when Microsoft really took the step out with a public proclamation of being carbon negative by 2030. And that they made the point of saying that they would reduce the net emissions of Microsoft by 55% by that date. So that's inclusive of business growth, which is very ambitious. It's showing an alignment with not just the company goals, but it's also showing alignment with the kind of radical, ambitious action that needs to be taken at the planetary level for us to bring solutions to bear. The other piece that I think is really important is that Microsoft committed to, by 2050, removing all of the historical emissions that Microsoft has released into the atmosphere since company inception, which was in the 1970s. So that is a quantitative accounting of how many emissions that have happened, and then not offsetting. It's not a matter of offsetting. It's a matter of investing in renewable energy to replace the opportunities that are currently out there, as well as actively removing carbon and investing in those technologies and markets so that it creates a stronger ability for markets to reach the enormous need for climate solutions in the future. So these were two very ambitious goals put out there. And I think when other companies hear about how high the ambition is, they can oftentimes feel that this is something unattainable for them. And I think it's really important for every company and every leader in every company to realize that the way in which we confront climate and energy challenges has everything to do with the opportunities that we have at hand and the unique culture and strengths that each individual company and where it's located bring to bear on the solutions. So that is to say, not every company can do everything, but every company can do something, and it can do something really substantial. I decided to do this fireside chat in front of an oceanside chat today because I'm located in Alaska, and I know that in fact there's lots of people from China that are curious about Alaska because it's staying quite cool. It's very different, and in fact, when we look out the window, there's a cruise ship even in my very front yard. I don't know if you can see that out there. And so my front yard this summer is full of Chinese tourists coming to look at what's right across the street, the fish hatchery of the salmon that are coming back at this time of year, that are providing all of the enrichment of our local ecologies and economies and the well-being for our local communities. And so we're very far away, but we are coming together in a way that is exchanging and also trying to find an authentic way to come together for positive solutions, also for the planet. And when we talk about leadership and ambition for companies, regardless of place on the planet where they are, regardless of the culture in which they are working, what's so important is to find footing in your local conditions, in your local culture, and also identify those places in your local market where you really have traction. When Microsoft leaders made the commitment, and this is Satya Nadella, Brad Smith, and Amy Hood, made this really ambitious climate commitment, they put the idea of achieving climate negative out there intentionally as a very ambitious, visionary goal. I come from hockey country, so we play hockey on the ice. And there's a saying by Wayne Gretzky, a hockey star, that says, "Do not skate to where the hockey puck is right now. You need to skate to where that puck is going to be in the future." And so when we think about company leadership, that idea of casting the puck out there, and this is what was done with ambitious climate goals. You cast that puck out there for the whole company, and you're collectively turning the eyes of the company toward what is a dominant force that will also create the sustainable well-being for the company in the future. Because it's undeniable, the data, the conditions, the heat waves, the scarcities, the challenges, and the market disruptions that are happening, these are global forces that time and time again, we look at the data, and this is radically shifting the landscape. Any corporate leader that looks at the writing on the wall and realizes that in the long run, this is something that is going to turn every corporate ship in the future. And so the more we can do to put out those very ambitious goals that, as far as they may be aspirational and seem unattainable in the near term, they shift the collective eye of looking at these big ambitions. They spark new conversations, they break down silos, and then also they let us look at the landscape in a very different way. We uncover lots of waste, lots of opportunities for savings. We get a much sharper view on emerging markets. We see innovations and disruptions as opportunities for the future in a way that we didn't before. And so collectively, this is a very resilient, proactive stance in leadership that allows us to embrace change and turn it into an engine for innovation and development, as well as a ton of reward for all of our employees that feel very personally connected to something that otherwise would leave them feeling very out of control and very like they couldn't do something. And this sense of meaning really helps us with employee retention, as well as, you can imagine, the gamers, because the gamers are all deeply connected to what's happening in the world. They're younger, they're savvier, they have a totally different way of looking at their purchasing decisions. And to be able to give them a sense of agency to create the change that they want to, in conjunction with all of these wonderful communities they love to be in to create a better future, that is really a value proposition for each of our gamers. And it's a very, very important point of making these ambitious climate goals.
You mentioned about aspiration goals, big ambitions, and lots of opportunities we can take home, but I wouldn't assume it's going to be a smooth sailing for the companies. So what are the challenges like Xbox, Microsoft has experienced in your course of going forward to the carbon negative goal?
I think relative to my position, so I'm director of gaming sustainability for Xbox. It's one of the major emitting business groups of Microsoft, and as such, there's a strong leadership role across the company. One of the biggest challenges is combating the idea that that just because you assign a chief sustainability officer or you have a director of gaming sustainability, that person is going to handle everything. And what's really important, if we're authentically aligning with that great hockey puck goal and that ambition of turning the collective eye toward a dominant market force, is to recognize that the real job is making every job in a company a climate job, an energy efficiency job, a waste elimination job, a gamer engagement job. And so that's something that is, it's about a transformational change endeavor. It is something about driving a cultural shift throughout a company that is very different than just hiring one person or adding a number of jobs on the org chart, because it's really about taking a look at all of the assets and individuals and brain powers and passions that are in place in the organization and drawing off of that and empowering that in place. No company off of the starting line has an immediate massive budget to just go out and do whatever it wants to do in the sustainability space. And no intelligent manager is going to write that check to let that happen in a company anyway, because it doesn't make the most of the assets that a company has in place. There's no way of knowing how much brain power has already been put on energy efficiency and improvement in this area that very much aligns with climate ambition without working to uncover it in your workforce to begin with. Tapping into the passions of people that have already been maybe putting in their nights and weekends or are working on a side project but never felt empowered to bring that to bear in their workspace is an enormous source of energy, engagement, and resources that you probably never even knew that you had. And oftentimes, sustainability could be siloized into one part of the company. And that really limits the diversity of the investment portfolio that a gaming company can take to creating those real challenges. So that's one of the major big pieces that we have been working with is shifting the mindset about how sustainability is approached, how we also engage governance across the whole company so that every single business group in Xbox is aligned, is attuned, and is also contributing in its own authentic way to create goals that are representative of the entire corporate culture. A second challenge, I think, is in that when we talk about the accounting of making progress, and I rattled off those goals like carbon negative and carbon neutral as if everybody knows what those are and exactly how to do it. But in fact, it's very much a work in progress. And even the greenhouse gas protocol involves methodology. And as we invest over the course of years and even a decade, that methodology must also evolve. And so strengthening our approach collectively so that all companies can make the biggest possible investment and commitment and also progress for the planet is really important. There's a number of places in which, for example, advances in greenhouse gas accounting, the progress that we can make from an innovative standpoint doesn't necessarily reveal itself in the greenhouse gas protocol. And so we don't necessarily always get public credit for a lot of the stuff that we know is making a real climate difference. And that can be a challenge. And we can resolve that by improving the greenhouse gas protocol so that more companies get that visible and market-based incentive to keep improving. And we can do things that help us improve data sets and tracking so that we know that we're able to prove and have auditable, reliable, transparent data sources so that everybody can be on the same page about what it is we mean when we talk about progress, how we're going to measure it, and then what to do when we reach roadblocks that one company alone cannot resolve, and how we can come together to make better collective actions across the whole gaming industry.
So it's very interesting to hear that you mentioned about creating impact and also about data management. I think lots of our audiences will be interested to know is how does Xbox address carbon transparency issues about data disclosure?
I think in the past year, we did our first sustainability report, and this was our first opportunity to publicly compare the year-on-year emissions from one year to another. With respect to transparency, I think one thing that I've been really proud of Microsoft for is the commitment to do what we said we are going to do. And sometimes, just as I was talking about the greenhouse gas protocol, we have a commitment to public entities like the greenhouse gas protocol methodology that are uniformly shared among many companies that constrain us to certain ways of reporting our advances. And sometimes that doesn't even show us in the best light. So here's an example. Greenhouse gas protocol requires us, when we put out a new console, to account for the lifetime of that console's emissions in the year that it is released. If we do something like increase the repairability of a console, which is a great thing, right? It helps circular economy, it helps the user, it helps make it possible so that we don't have to buy new consoles, and it saves emissions. However, by extending the lifespan of that console, we actually see the carbon footprint of the release of that console go up. So there's a counterintuitive relationship. A second is the emissions for that console are estimated in the year the console was released to market. And it's as if the emissions are static, the same every single year. But what if we've engaged our hardware and software to optimize energy efficiency, and the console is actually emitting less per gamer hour year on year, and we're doing a good job? The greenhouse gas protocol right now is not able to acknowledge that. And it also, so it's harder for us then to give incentives to our studios to do the same kind of innovation. But I'm confident that these are things that are going to change, and in fact, in the way in which we are creating data management systems so that all of those are connected, right from the console to the operating system to the game company, the studio, the per title contribution, and even the mode of gaming. The form of gaming, or the way in which they're engaging with a title in any given moment. All of those things contribute to the net footprint of the gaming product. And so one of the big investments that Microsoft has made is in managing transparent systems and also providing solutions platforms for other companies to effectively manage their footprint. Microsoft made a massive investment in Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. That's now called Sustainability Manager. And as a consequence, we are now onboarding all the first-party studios for Xbox onto that platform and creating bespoke interfaces for many of these studios so that they can take a unique look at the gaming product and make optimizations that they didn't know was possible. So building those kinds of systems that work together and allow for transparent data management is really important. Also, sticking to doing what you said you were going to do, even if it doesn't always make you look the best, is also a really important part of the Microsoft commitment. Microsoft leaders made clear that we were not going to try to hide the ball in any way, shape, or form. And so as a consequence, many of the way in which we go about reporting has to do with what we said we were going to do rather than necessarily the most detailed or nuanced information that even could make us look better in many other cases than we actually do. And that's also part of us working proactively with an external auditor that goes through every single line of our commitment. And we have a year-round reporting process that involves an analytical look at what is being summarized, how it's being summarized, and does it align with what we said we were going to do last time.
Are there any tools that you found useful that can help to solve some of the issues we're talking about and also help the companies to set the pace for corporate decarbonization journey?
I think that management software is an area that has been really evolving quickly, and I think it helps a lot of companies start to get their footing underneath them in quantitative form. And I think that allows a company to align what could be investment decisions that have to show return on investment that can deal with a short time horizon, as well as that showing how that short-term commitment and return on investment also ladders up to a much longer term investment. That kind of software and the evolution in that approach is happening rapidly. It's a very important disconnect to be building capacity in, because we know that the business cycle requires us to respond to a year-on-year return on investment, maybe 2 years at the maximum. But when we talk about a 2030 goal, that's 7 years down the line. It's quite a different leadership and investment gap to have to realize. And the software that helps us see clearly the systemic approaches we have to take is really important. So the accounting tools that I just mentioned, that's one thing. Collaboration tools and engaging productively with other companies is so important. Empowering somebody that's working in this space is all about connecting them with peers that are informed and able and passionate about same things so that they can work together and create a new way forward. If we leave them alone in our own companies and they're struggling, then we won't make the same collective advancements. And sustainability is one of those areas where we all make the best progress when we go fast and forward together. Even if Microsoft hit its 2030 goals and the rest of the planet failed on its goals, then it would be as if that entire investment was all for naught. So it's so important that we all get together and do what we can to make sure that these sustainability, energy efficiency, and climate resilient solutions are being activated at all levels, especially in areas like China, where there are so many companies that are deeply connected and committed to collaboration, and that we can do a lot of things that really improve everything from manufacturing to technological innovation to software development and innovation and data management. So there's lots of opportunities that are ripe for collaboration there, and the kinds of tools and leadership supports, I think, really are a great investment. The last thing that I think is so valuable is the tools about futuring and imagining what the future looks like. when we work in the private sector, it's very easy to oftentimes have, what does next quarter look like? What does next month look like? And that almost seems sometimes like a far off goal. Maybe we think to the end of the fiscal year, and that seems like a stretch. Taking time in the business calendar to collectively shut off the noise for a little bit and think about what are the most dynamic things that are at play that are affecting our consumers in their daily lives, and what is the kind of experience that they really want that ties to their core values, their sense of fulfillment, and also empowers them to do things that they didn't think was possible. So toolkits like strategic foresight, futuring, visioning, these are all tools that are really underrated. They're not particularly taught in schools, but as leaders, if we can set aside time for our teams, and I don't care how small of a team you have, or even if you're only in charge of yourself and you're just setting some time to journal or write it down for yourself, these are all really important investments for you to make.
In your previous interviews, you mentioned about culture is as equally important as strategy. So I think in the gaming sustainability case, it's about creating the sustainability culture. And also today in our talk, you mentioned about mindset shift and also about collective actions. So I wanted to know, what has Xbox learned, in the course of creating a carbon negative path that can be used to galvanize greater actions in the gaming industry?
Sure. There's another quote that I really like, which is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can think through a business plan, you can have everything lined up, but if you're not attuned deeply with the cultural shift that is at hand, if you're not doing that deep level listening and realigning, even when it's very uncomfortable and involves a lot of shifting, then you could have a wonderful plan, but you could be totally aiming for the wrong horizon. And similarly, the open learning and growth mindset is so important, because one of the things that I think holds people up when they are attempting to create change in the emissions space or managing data is the belief that they have to have everything right, and that it has to be they have to have all the answers to even get started or to keep up with others. And that's not at all the case. In fact, every single company that is investing in the decarb space is on a constant journey of learning, and that even those companies that are very well established must take time and also have the openness, the cultural openness in their work groups to take a fresh look at data, to have a new hire that comes in and asks uncomfortable questions about how are these indicators really aligning? Does this really make sense for us to use this as a metric of success when it doesn't really measure what it is that matters? And so that growth mindset is something that we can cultivate internal to our teams, and we can also take on at a corporate level to show that we might not have all the answers, but we as a company have identified those places where we can fill a void that existed, and we can do better than any other company. Every company in the world can say that. Every company in the world can take a look at the climate challenge and say, this is something we're really good at. We may not be able to do everything, but this is something that we can really bring to the table, and to invest deeply in that without the need to feel like they have to have absolutely everything right. And I think that that's it's a much more empowering stance. And then when we come together across multiple companies to share solutions, then we're really cooking with gas. We've got lots of different opportunities. We're catalyzing insights. We're making the most of each other's strengths. And then we're able to make so many more contributions collectively at a global level than we even thought possible.
Thank you for your inspiring insights, Trista. I think it's not going to be an easy journey for the gaming industry to transit to net zero. But if we keep learning and adapt, not alone, but in close collaboration with others, I am very confident the gaming industry will be able to reach the net zero goal. And dear participants, I hope you enjoyed our discussion for today. If you're interested in knowing more about the P4P work and the Microsoft's great work, you're welcome to get in touch with me and Trista. Reducing carbons is where the world needs to go, and we are looking forward to having you on the team. Thank you very much, and let me hand the stage back to Sam.
So thank you. That's great to hear from you, Trista and Xiao. That was a really great session on decarbonisation. There's a lot happening and there's a lot more to do. So I think now really is possibly the most important part of it, which is what are the main takeaways from this and how can you make a difference and what you can do to support this work. So really from our side, what we wanted to share with you is a couple of ideas. So first of all, I think what we've learned from Hunter and from Elisa and from Jay and Trista is that gamers are no longer just playing games to play. They also are looking for new things. So whether it's purpose, real world action, socializing and learning and sharing with friends, there's all kinds of things you can do on this agenda through games. And people want to really see a difference. We've learned that from some of the polling we've had in the Green Game Jam. And I think we'll start to see more of that. The second point is there's really interesting ways you can activate players on this agenda. We've seen that with the game with the Trista board. I love that from Hunter earlier. But we've also seen climate marches from Riders Republic, which they'll be doing over the course of the next few days. But we're also seeing how studios from Xiao and Trista are starting to calculate and cut their carbon footprints by using tools that they can make an assessment of what they can do on their own emissions. So 3 things you can do. Really work with your gamers and listen to them about what they want. Number 2, gamers really are keen on the environmental agenda we're seeing in some of the studios we're working with. But 3, cutting your carbon footprint is not as hard as you think, and there's some easy ways you can make a start. And so how can you support us? I think it's 3 things. One is what you can do as a private citizen. Your carbon footprint is probably down to 3 things. It's what you eat, it's how you travel, and it's how you power your home. So everything you can do to think about those small changes, they can add up to a big difference. But here in the Alliance, what we're looking to do is really get professional support with studios taking action, as we've said, on green activations in games or decarbonisation. And if you're already a member, then Alliance members can invite more people to join. So I hope you found this an interesting hour. Thank you for joining us. We hope we'll be back next year to hear what's been achieved. And I think on behalf of all of us, thank you for this opportunity to address you. And we look forward to seeing what comes next. Many thanks.